Hello. Well, great news, YouTube. I just recorded like a 30-minute video and the audio cut out like 5 minutes into it. Now I got to re-record it, which is great. Fantastic. So I'm probably going to do this a lot faster than I did the first time. ZENA, I longed it. Where did I long it? At $4, and then I added. And then it went up. So this is a rare midday long video. We're talking about midday long structures. Which I only ever do on my Patreon. Honestly, Patreon Discord members talk a lot more about this. Hasn't been happening recently, so we really haven't had to talk about it. But anyway, we'll talk about midday longs. We'll talk about the daily. We'll talk about all the other times this exact stuff has happened. Talk about the volume. Talk about the structure. Talk about a lot of things. Okay, I was not here for the run up. So I was here when it was near its highs and it was putting in higher high, higher high, higher high, higher high. Watch all this stuff. And then it dumps, right? So we're going to go over like all the bullish factors. Okay, many bullish factors to talk about here. Number one, fresh daily. There's like no trading history on the daily. It's like completely wide open. Number two is I tend to be more bullish intraday runners that have big increasing volume like this, right? Especially pushing the millions per minute consistently, very nice. I think you'll see me make market open longs where it's like it gaps up in the pre-market, opens near the lows, hyper aggressively pushes. These tend to top relatively soon. These tend to top. Look at WorkX. I longed WorkX. Did a Patreon video on where I longed WorkX 190 and I longed it up to 260 on the same day that MSTR did its thing. So also shorted MSTR. Anyway, what do you call it? Those tend to top relatively quickly. Intraday runners have a lot more potential. Intraday runners also have more midday rotation potential, right? So both those things are interesting. Fresh chart's interesting. Let's look at the specific structure, right? This is a great long structure. When you get higher high accumulation, higher high, higher high, higher high, and dump. Usually very consistent high volume. Just imagine these are the volume bars on these pushes, and then you get a quick aggressive dump. We will talk about this on other trades, such as MLGO, such as CMAX, such as WHLR, that all did similar things to this, okay? And then, what was the MLGO structure, right? Let me just show you what... So, I do want to mention that in my Discord, this was at 2:42 market time. I called out that this reminded me of MLGO. Let's see how this reminded me of MLGO. Right, and here's me longing in the low fours, and then here's me sharing the charts for MLGO. So let's look at, just really fast, let's look at what, not Wheeler, MLGO did, I believe, on June 4th. I have this chart memorized. There's a bunch of just amazing, amazing, amazing stuff happening in this chart, but the structure we're looking at is up here. Up here. So let's see. This chart, the stock started at 150. It pushed to $13. A little bit extended. Shorts are probably interested in trading it, given how extended it is. Okay? So let's see how shorts are positioning themselves and how the market maker is rigging this stock. Little helpful tip about stocks in low float land, by the way. The longer a stock spends looking weak, the stronger it is. The longer a stock spends looking strong, the weaker it is. Okay? That's just how it works. Okay? So anyways, get this massive range expansion over this nice little high day clear out short trap. Pretty crazy, right? Massive pull down. So what do we get? $13 resistance gets smacked. Fake whole dollar resistance. That's a bullish factor. These lower highs are at about 11.7. This is at 13. There's a 10% air pocket where like no shares are being traded. Again, what does that remind you of? Reminds me of this. Here's $5. Here's 4.5 paint, 4.5 paint for big air pocket to rotate into. What else has this happened on? CMAX. CMAX from this day. Fake whole dollar resistance, 4.5 paint, 4.5 paint, intraday runner, up 200%, shorts are smacking, quick pullback from the highs, crazy lower high paint, massive air pocket. It's like, how do you catch these? You study the ones that made the same type of move. It's like, what do you mean? How do how do you catch them? Same shit as anything else. You want to know how a stock going on a 200% intraday run keeps going up? Well, you should probably look at every time that's happened with decent volume over the past 3 years, and it gains some type of understanding, right? And by the way, a lot of these trades, I missed this trade on MLGO long. I didn't see it, but I was like, a lot of the charts that are burned into my mind are the plays that I missed, right? The plays where the opportunity was there, I just didn't see what the manipulated liquidity thesis was, right? Like what was happening here? Like how can I anticipate that? What factors were present in terms of intraday, in terms of the book, in terms of the daily, in terms of, themes or sector strength or whatever. Like there's a bunch of factors, right? You're always weighing a bunch of different factors at the same time. But I will say about this structure, this dump, controlled lower high dump, this usually needs to bottom. This usually bottoms relatively quickly the moment the painted support level gets taken out. So we'll go back to ZENO, ZENA. It wasn't even a ticker back then. So when I saw this logo put in, that's when I said on my Discord, this has interesting rotation potential. Reminds me of MLGO. But I knew MLGO bottomed relatively soon. So a lot of times I'm making these reads back into the zone, right? Because you're always thinking right here, you're thinking the same way you thought over here, right? We get a nice little manipulated walk up, and it put a 25K bid at $4. And this is where like understanding market maker tricks also comes into play, where a lot of times on extended tickers, when a market maker puts up a big like a decent sized bid, and the more extreme the bid is, say it's like 50K or 80K, the more this is true. But even 25K is a decent sized bid here. Where they'll put up a big bid, but there'll be almost no reaction off that bid. There's no follow through. Maybe there's an initial burst of buying the moment people see it, but then it dries up really fast, starts stalling, right? And what often happens is that level, whatever level that bid is painting, it becomes a target, right? In this case, that level's right at $4. So we got fake whole dollar support again. So I knew this consolidation was in the 390s. I'm like, oh, this would be a great opportunity if I think this has rotation potential through $4.50 and $5, right? Those are the two main liquidity targets that are closest to where we're longing here. A common trick would be to fill that bid and then push it back up, right? So a lot of times I'm anticipating the $4 support gets swiped, but I'm interested in what the reaction is after that support gets taken out, right? And if I see the bid holding, I'm looking at the bid. In this case, I'm not even looking at the book. I'm looking at the level 2, right? And I'm looking at the tape, right? I tape level 2 open. I see the bid get filled. I see how the tape's reacting. I see how the ask is reacting, and I make a decision. And that's in this one I liked what I saw. Went long, and had a nice average, right? And then the main concern in this structure is the reason I'm selling this is, I'm a little bit afraid, because you always have to consider. Whenever I'm in my Discord and my Patreon, I'm always saying the same thing. You always have to understand what the bearish thesis is. Bearish thesis is this higher. There's a higher low trend line here, right? It's quite extended, obviously, and then it swipes 4.5 and maybe knifes back down, right? So I always sell a little bit, and then we get this pattern. Now, this structure is the most interesting structure. This whole structure is the most interesting, because this is where really understanding how short sellers trade and what patterns they trade can really produce a thesis. Because what you have to understand about big squeezes like this is these are mostly driven by short sellers, especially wider risk short sellers, getting attacked and stopped out, right? Hyper emotional, hyper aggressive stop loss targeting by market makers of, especially on tickers like this, fresh chart, tons of volume, tons of short trappy behavior. right, becomes a good target or good candidate for a larger percent push. So I want to talk about this first. So I sold a lot going into this high day cloud, and the reason I sold a lot going into this high day cloud is because this on extended tickers, this is a common high day clear out short pattern. Get a big extension, you get a pullback, you get it come from deep lows, you get hyper aggressive pushing that tops the moment the liquidity level gets swiped. $5 is the main level, gets hyper aggressively targeted and dumps. If you want an example of this, we'll go to VSTE here. This is exactly what I mean. Hyper. By the way, I was long this. I tried and I sold some, held some, added, and a hidden seller showed up and I got stopped out. It was still a decent win, but this is a short pattern, right? Hyper aggressive high day clear out from the lows, stalls right away, they dump, right? Okay, so that happens. Do I not know how to type? That happens here. Hyper aggressive, high day clear out, and it starts to dump. But a big thing I tell people on my Patreon, it's like you have to. It's not just anticipating what this reaction could be, right? In this case, I'm anticipating that this could be a potential topping move up to the $5 liquidity level, especially given how aggressive it pushed. But a lot of times, especially in terms of short traps, if you're long and you're hoping for, or if you're looking to get an entry, you're looking for what's the reaction after this happens, because you're supposed to know what normally happens. What normally happens is aggressive push off support, swipes high day, stalls, and fades, right? Super common, crazy common short pattern. And of course, high day clouds are always going to be a common short pattern no matter what. But this type of high day cloud specifically is also a high reward short pattern on extended tickers, right? And then, it starts doing this aggressive. Look at the volume. So I'm always looking at volume. I'm like, they've started throwing up a ton of bids up here with a ton of volume, and I thought this was going to start ripping. I was like, okay, trap shorts on a high day clear out and rip. But then it starts to transition to a different structure. What happens in this different structure? We start getting a higher low bid prop, right? Some higher low propping up here. Higher low, higher low, higher low, and I actually put my stop loss in the fives, right? I was like, oh, if it cracks 5, I'll just get out the rest of my position and take the 20-25% that I made, which is great. I was like, that was a nice trade. But at the same time, what's happening up here? These tightly painted lower highs right below high day. Another bullish factor we talk about in my room all the time. Tightly painted lower highs right by high day always are a big target. Let's go to APLM from this day. It's the same thing. Tightly painted lower highs, tightly painted lower highs, tightly painted lower highs. Massive short trap candle, right? At least potential has, long trap and a short trap. If you want to know what that means, join my Patreon. I'll tell you what it means. Talk about it all the time. Anyway, so in this structure, this is another bearish pattern. When a stock starts bid propping near the highs like this, massive higher low bid prop near the high, especially after multiple liquidity squeezes, a lot of times this is top, right? You trap a bunch of longs chasing this, and you crack through the higher lows, and especially on extended tickers, it has big fade potential. So I got stopped out. But what I'm interested in what's the reaction after 5. This is another fake whole dollar support getting attacked. What's the reaction? And what happened was they popped it back above 5 and they started throwing. I'll show you the book, but they started throwing up bids at 5. So I threw some on, and then I noticed they had this on a micro, kind of a micro level here. They had this 515, 516 area. I was like, oh. If this starts rotating through the 520s, I'm going to go in long. I'm going to re-hit it, right? So I added to my position. And then I thought once 5.4 goes, this is 1 high day clear out. This is 2 high day clear out. This should go. What did it do? It did a 3rd high day clear out, which again, putting your little manipulator hat on, like, Short sellers cannot help themselves. They cannot help themselves. They are loading in on all these higher lows that they're anticipating is going to break, on all these high day clearouts that refuses to keep pushing. Loading. And once everyone's loaded in and there's nobody left to short, right? What happens? Massive range expansion. Now, has this happened before? Many times. Not even that long ago. HCWB last Monday. Last Monday, the same thing happened. Okay, obviously, massively gapped up ticker, 33 cents to 1.3 in the pre-market. Short sellers can't help. Again, they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves, guys. Okay, high day clear out number 1. High day clear out number 2. Dump. High day clear out number 3. Dump. Wow. High day keeps getting aggressively attacked. Again, this is another short, same idea. From the lows, hyper aggressive high day clear out that instantly starts showing weakness. Common short pattern. Shorts cannot help themselves. They are loading in, and they never get the move they want, right? Because a lot of times they do get the move they want. A lot of times that's a high odds pattern in many structures. You'll get tight risk 40-50% fades. It does happen. But it's when the stock has other factors involved, bullish factors that maybe short sellers aren't necessarily taking into account when they're shorting these stocks. For ZENA has a lot of them. And then here's another one. And then what happens when all the high day clear out shorts are kind of loaded in? You get the range expansion. Right? Super nice. Back to ZENA. So anyways, I added back here, and then I rode this up. I actually just longed off the 1 minute 20, rode this up again. Sold most in the 7s, and now I'm actually swinging a little bit for tomorrow. Now my average is in like the 5s somewhere, but my average was in the low 4s when I started this long. One final little note about this. Which is a very interesting phenomenon that happens on these strong stocks, is that one thing I always talk about in my YouTube videos, in my Sunday reviews on my Patreon, everything. One thing I always talk about is that in low float land, higher low flags, here we got like a flat top here, right? We got a bunch of clean higher lows building. We know in manipulated low float land, higher low flags are dog shit longs in like 98% of situations. Like the vast majority of the time, market makers in low float land will rig a higher low flag, to bait retail longs into chasing a stock that they intend to dump, right? So trusting them and believing in them in most structures is not a good thing. This, however, on the strongest plays, on some of the strong, and we'll go back to HCWB, the strongest plays, what's funny is you always have to think counterintuitively, right? Where this is stock up a couple 100%, trading insane volume, super controlled, super manipulated. The counterintuitive thing is that a higher low flag at the top is going to work massively. No one believes that is going to. Just from the fact that nobody believes that's going to happen makes it so much stronger. And again, going back to this chart from Monday, it's like the same thing, dude. It's like the same thing. Same higher low fucking flag and massive. And keep in mind, up here, this closed at 1.33. This is up like 300% right here. That's the thing. That's a crazy thing about it. It's a lot of times the retail flag on a stock up 50%, 60, 70% is actually not very good. But the ones that are up like somehow 300% are me. That's the counterintuitive thinking about it. It's so unexpected. And it deviates so far from what so many people who trade these are thinking that you get a massive liquidity squeeze. So anyway, I did talk more about this in my other video that my audio got cut out, but I feel like I nailed the main points here. You know, intraday runner, big increasing volume, this higher high dump structure, the pain and lower highs, swiping to $4, soaking right away, the control. Control's hard to teach, man. I didn't even go over the book. I don't even know how many of you actually care about the book. I love the book, though. Where's the book, dog? I closed it. Okay, whatever. I'll tell you what happened on the book. I'll tell you what happened on the book. They put a bunch of bids here. That's what happened on the book here. What they also did is they put a bunch of bids here. They put a bunch of bids here after this swipe. They put a bunch of bids here after this swipe. And then they just attacked everybody and it massively squeezed, right? Fucking empty-ass daily. Nothing on the daily. Oh, I guess one minor point. Here's something I forgot to talk about. This day. This actually gave me a little bit more confidence. I talked about this in the SPAI video, where a lot of times riggers will, a day before, 2 days before, 3 days before, will pop a stock. And it could be intraday, could be pre-market. They'll pop a stock and instantly drop it, and then you'll see rigs happen days later. We saw this on SPAI. I did a video on this on YouTube that you can watch. Not this. But what led up to it? This. These pop and drops. These pop and drops, right? That's why I was longing this here, because I was hoping to catch what ended up being this move here. Now they ended up aggressively dumping everybody. Classic manipulated dump pattern there. And then I did catch a little bit in the pre-market with a long at the top. I think I did a video on this day. I did not do a video on this day. There's a pattern you can learn by joining my room called longing at the top, where you long a stock. Like, I'm not even joking. You're literally longing the stock like here, right? And you're potentially writing it for like 20, 30, 40, 50%. It's very specific. You need a very good liquidity thesis to go along with it. And you need the book. You need Bookmap. I do not know how you cannot trade that pattern without the book. It's book dependent, right? Anyway, so for today, I made a bunch of money on this. It was great. It was great to see the control. It was great to see matching the manipulation, the control, the chart in the chart paint with like a bigger thesis, and then holding through a lot of it. Obviously, I still sold too early in many places, so there's areas to improve. But it's good to see it play out. I'm swinging a little bit. I don't know. It's it's. I pretty much added everything I had back when it was soaked to 5. I caught a huge amount of this, so even if it knives, even if they offer, like it won't even be that big of a deal. Whatever they plan to do. So that is it for today. Information down below about the Patreon. I want to learn about manipulation, volume, structure, dailies, everything I talk about. I'm active in there every day. I'm not active. I'm definitely not active on Twitter anymore. And then except to literally spend the 5 seconds posting this video. And then once a week on YouTube when I bother to do it. So anyways, that's it. You guys have a good one. See you tomorrow. Or see you tomorrow if you join my Patreon. See you like next week if you don't. See ya.